Yes, I did.
You hide it.
I can't get out of it. You just press this. I guess I just need your finger to touch it.
Special mayor's touch.
Yeah.
You lost that.
Apparently,
Oh, that's right, you're asking.
apparently big time.
Been a couple months.
Yeah,
There you go.
okay. There.
Everybody ready?
I'm good.
Jim?
You're on, Bob.
7 o'clock, so let's bring this commission meeting to order. We'll start with a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we'll have public comment. The commission requests that comments be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes for each person. If you want to comment, please come to the podium and state your name and your address.
I'll be the first guinea pig.
Good evening. My name's Larry Powell. I had an unsuccessful candidate run for the city commissioner on the last election. On the closing of the two city parks, I'm 100% opposed to closing these two parks. My property at 129 East 13th is just across the alley from Martin Luther King Park at 12th and Franklin. I drive by Satoma Park on my way to Walmart every time. I see these two parks being used on a daily basis by my grandchildren and teenagers and adults. I see no savings by closing the parks down. This is just an additional expense to the city in the form of cost of removing and reinstalling our playground equipment to a park on the rich side of town. The city would still have to cut the grass as well as pick up the trash from two empty lots. Martin Luther King Park is the only park that is close to a large population of children, teenagers, and adults in the area, as well as is Satoma Park. There is a large amount of mobile homes close to Satoma Park. Everyone that uses these two parks does not use South Park. Why not close South Park and use their playground equipment for the new rich folks park? South Park is too hard to find. Being sarcastic, I'm sorry. I wish to ask of you city commissioners that, who live on the east side of Washington Street and north of Walmart, do any of you live in that area where all these are being closed? Anybody live there at all?
No.
Well, I do. I suggest that the city take some of the drug bust money and use it for the new rich folks park and leave our parks alone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Alan Roethlisberg, State Representative, 65th District, Grandview Plaza. What I'm here to go to is Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 21st. I'm having a town hall meeting at the 12th Street Community Center from 10 until 12. And a couple issues we're going to be discussing is I've already talked with the revisers at Topeka about making student activities fees optional. We just have to verify or clarify exactly what those areas cover, and to allow in-state tuition benefits to every family member of our servicemen and women who are stationed here in the state. Right now, it's just for the servicemen themselves. I want to extend that to their whole family. Because I feel if we can give it to illegal aliens, we can sure give it to the men and women who serve our country. So I hope to see you there. It's an open forum. I do provide coffee and fat pills, donuts for you guys who aren't fat. But it's, like I said, I do run an open forum, and I hope to see you there. Thank you.
And Alan, I'd like to apologize to you for not recognizing you Saturday at the Juneteenth. I saw you there and I forgot to mention it, but I appreciate you coming out for the Juneteenth
Oh,
Saturday.
well, thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner, and Commissioner Sands did a great job out there.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Jacqueline McDonald. I live at 2718 Glendale Road, Junction City Class. I'm the president of NAACP. We're going to have a fun-free free day at the 18th in Buffalo Street Monument Park, the 21st. That's Saturday. Everybody invited. It's free. We have some hot dogs, buns, drinks, stuff like that. Just a fellowship time. Thank you.
That's the 21st?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Larry Johnson. Thanks for letting me come back here again. I want to address you about the 36-foot driveways. I sent an email to everybody about what we're trying to do. We'd just like to see the ordinance revised so that we can do 36-foot driveways for 3-car garages in town. We've been allowed to do that on several houses up until this year, and now they've shut it off, and we can't do that anymore. And just would like you to reconsider it. Both Manhattan and Salina both allow 36-foot driveways. They have newer ordinances that do allow for them on 3-car garages. And it's something that is becoming more and more popular with all the people. And some of the subdivisions, they're not allowed to park boats and so forth in the driveway. So the 3rd-car garage makes some place for them to put it. I don't know if I'll have a chance to rebut anything the city staff has to say, but we'd just like to, be able to give you my input into it and let you know. Today we bought some of the lots at the auction that were up for sale, and the blight man came out and blighted us on one of our lots that we had mowed 3 weeks ago. And on that, a week later, we applied for a building permit and also got a dig safe out there to have everything marked out so we could begin construction. Tomorrow will be 2 weeks and we still don't have a building permit, but they do have time to come back with us after us for that blight. When we asked them about it, they said that the staff was too busy doing blights and inspection notices, and they hadn't had time to get a building permit out to us. So just wanted to make you aware of that too. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Anybody else? No further comments. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda?
I think I had some.
I'll move to approve the, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as outlined.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Being no discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0.
Mayor, I may want to mention, Cheryl, this item, 4A, I think we may want to remove that from the agenda. I called the lady who was interested in the block party, informed her of a special permit process. We may want to move the closure to table the item until the first meeting in July. I haven't heard back from her.
Because we haven't
yet.
heard back from her. It was ready to go on the agenda. Chief Brown put it on the agenda for the street, but then we called her back to say that it was incomplete, that she'd have to have a special use permit, and she wasn't aware of that. And so she wasn't sure that she was going to continue with the block party.
Make a motion to table item 4A.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to table 4A. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 5-0. Move on to 4B, the update on municipal court project and consideration to let for bid.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'd like to talk a little bit about the municipal court expansion. In January, as you're aware, we selected Bruce McMillan Architects for the architect and engineering services at the proposed municipal court building. They worked with the municipal court staff, myself, Cheryl, the police department, and the prosecutor's office to kind of solidify the concepts for the building, and now they have really done a good job of putting the plans together. And what we're asking for you tonight is to receive an update from Bruce McMillan regarding that project and to consider letting us begin the bid process. And so if there are no questions from you, I'd like to have Mr. McMillan come up and provide information about the project.
Would it be customary to give out the engineer's estimate prior to bid?
I think my understanding is that when we did the project earlier, the numbers were provided, and I've been informed that they're still in that area, and so there's no estimate beyond what we've considered before. And the issue about providing that number is, since we're going out for bid, we don't want to show our cards.
Well, all I can report to you at this point is that it's within the 1.1 million budgeted.
But aren't we showing our cards when we say we have X amount of dollars budgeted for a project?
No,
Right
you-
now,
you have to state
that's
that.
public information,
Yeah,
and so
Okay.
but the
Interesting.
final engineering or architect's estimate is not
Okay.
at this point.
Okay.
Mayor Ryan, Commissioners, my name is Bruce McMillan. I have an architectural practice here in Junction City at 332 West 7th Street, and I'm pleased to be able to come before you this evening. As Tyler and Cheryl have discussed, we have been working on the Municipal Court and Commission Chambers project after your approval for the last several months. With me this evening also is Garrick Baker with our office, has been our job captain on the project with us, and we appreciate Chief Brown's input as well as all of the staff input that we've received at this point. We have a sample of the documents right here. This is your project specification right here, and the reduced set of documents. Also, you have sample sheets in your commission packet that were drafted just for inclusion at that time. The overall project at this time includes the approximate 2,500 square foot existing building, plus the addition, which is just over 3,500 square feet. So we're between 6,000 and 6,500 square feet on the building in total. The focal point is obviously the municipal court chambers and commission chambers. The seating capacity in that will be upwards of 80 people, roughly 3 times the number that you can accommodate in this space right now, as far as that's concerned. The space allocation also has a private commission and court meeting room, a judge's chambers, a bailiff's office. There are 3 holding cells that are secure in the building, as well as a restroom facility in that area. The court clerk offices accommodate 3 individuals in the front office with safety security in that area, as well as the court clerk's office is adjacent to that. There is additional on main level file storage, no basement mold mildew issues that we've experienced in the existing building. There are 2 public defender offices as well, and it is entirely ADA accessible throughout the entire building. There is what we call a sally port on the northeast corner of the building that allows for secure gate enclosure for detainee transfer and into the building into a restricted area that then holds the detainees until they're brought directly into the courtroom space, and then they're taken right back out into a secure area and can be taken back to county facilities at that time. As was mentioned, we have evaluated the budget, and we have had a private commercial contractor also evaluate the budget with us. We are within the budget identified originally by staff and approved by the commission at this time. That is for the base contract. We do have alternates, and should the bids come in favorably, we would have several alternates, one of which would be an airlock entry on the front of the building, generally in the vicinity of where the west portion of the existing courtroom space is now. Fire sprinklers, some aesthetic amenities, as well as additional signage for the front of the building. Currently, we have checked with court staff, and we are anticipating placing the project to bid this coming weekend in the Daily Union at the weekend edition for June 21st, with a pre-bid meeting scheduled for right now, July 8th on Tuesday. It is not a conflict with court dates for municipal court, and bids being received on July 22nd. From that, if we would be favorably disposed as receipt on bids, we would bring those to you at your commission meeting on August 5th, and should approval be allowed at that time, we would get contracts, everything together for approval and signature for construction to begin on or about September 1st. We would expect about an 8-month, possibly 9-month construction period. We should be in the building about this time next year. And I will stand for any questions at this point, should there be some. We feel that the project at this time is in good shape for going to bid within the week. And again, we'd be glad to answer any questions or have any staff or Chief Brown make any comments that they might care to make.
Mr. McMillan, I have a question for you. I didn't think about this before, and it may be too far out the gate. This is the only building that won't match the downtown decor. Is it too late to try and put matching decor, some of the bricks or stones from the old courthouse, or something that replicates this limestone base?
That question, Commissioner, was brought forth at a previous meeting.
Okay.
As I understand, the demolition date for the municipal court building is still not finally identified, although it is forthcoming. And as I also understand, the request for the demolition includes full, or there's an alternate, is that correct?
There'll be an alternate.
For salvaging the facade stone on the front of the building. Right now, the building plans don't show that included. Should the bids come in favorably to salvage some of the stone on that particular front part of the building, at such time we can write a change order, if you will, to include some of that stone, should it be financially feasible to do that, and it appears that the budget allows that to be incorporated.
Okay.
If that adequately answers your question.
One other question that goes along with that. Is the price of pastured limestone that much different or that much more than brick?
Is the price of what, sir?
The pastured limestone, the kind that looks like it's not perfectly cut.
Oh, I see. The brick is going to be typically less expensive.
Okay.
We have an alternate for adding more brick even to the facade of the building on the west and the north side. The base bid, however, we have looked at a number of things,
in an earnest effort to keep the project within budget, we have left brick off of part of the east and the north side. The west and the north, excuse me. The east elevation will remain the metal building panels, as would be standard for the construction.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Were there any other questions?
I don't think so.
So is this low bid wins or what?
Is this what, sir?
This low bid wins or what?
Well, based upon a public bid situation, and the commission has always has a prerogative, and the notice to bidders does indicate that the owner has the right to accept or reject for any reason bids that are presented. That is a standard clause on most public bid openings. Typically, the commission would be, in my personal opinion, bound by good faith that the low bid, if the contractor meets all the qualifications and the bids check out as being acceptable, that then, yes, the commission would proceed accordingly and award it to the apparent low bidder. We are, in discussions with staff, going to advertise in regional construction news reports that are out of Wichita, Kansas City, et cetera, so that we would have opportunities for regional contractors to bid as well as local, and that we would hopefully get adequate interest in the project from other locations as well as right here in town. Whether the city has a option for preferential acceptance on local bids, that will need to be discussed within staff.
3%.
3%. And whether you choose to exercise that at that time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Were there any other questions?
I can't remember. It's been so long since I read that packet. Technologically, are we upgrading as well?
We will have, as I understand at this point, the purchase of audiovisual, televisions, sound, and so forth, are all being obtained by vendor through the city. They are being accommodated by the electrical service and components within the project, but those become vendor items. Now, we do have the control system for the gate on the secure entrance. That is specified in the project. Audiovisual, sound, television, et cetera, those items are vendor listed at the moment.
Okay, good. Thank you.
What that does, Commissioner, is and I don't mean to make it sound the way it's going to come out, it avoids the contractor markup on those components of the project.
We already have a vendor that we use.
No. We'll give you a breakdown of our intent to purchase those items tomorrow night at when we talk about the capital improvement budget. We have a breakdown for you.
Okay.
What it is we're requesting to purchase with that breakdown.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? What's the will of the commission?
Move the send out for bid the municipal court project in consideration as described.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve to send out to bid for the project. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Forgot to ask. Were there any further discussion?
It's already voted.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll keep you posted.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Much needed.
The next item will be consideration and approval of the rejection of bids for wastewater system in immediate news bid package 5.
He said.
Immediate needs.
Immediate.
Correct. Yes, Mayor and City Commission, this item comes before you. We had previously advertised this project well over, I want to say almost 2 months ago. We did not receive any bids. We reworked the bid documents and re-advertised it as well as direct solicited as far as several vendors. And unfortunately, we only received one bid. We feel that the bid is excessive. Our consultants have had some conversations with the lone bidder. They really were not able to give us as far as any justification of why the cost was significantly above and beyond as far as the engineer's estimate. And according to the fiscal policy, we need to bring this as far as before you, and basically we're looking for as far as the City Commission's approval on rejection of bid. Our intent with the project then is to look as far as possibly independently of these two particular pump items that are needed over at the Southwest plant and see if indeed we can work with the independent suppliers on potentially doing a sole source as far as on these, because they are a unique item, but again, we feel uncomfortable as far as recommending as far as the award of these pumps for this amount as far as that's been bid. So with that, I'd be happy to maybe answer any questions you might have on it.
So it'd be your intent then to negotiate, do a direct negotiation with the vendor?
Actually, the vendors as far as of the pump systems themselves. And we've done that successfully on a couple of other pumps that we've already had installed at, primarily at the Southwest plant, and we've been able to get that cost down significantly.
And will the vendor that produces the pumps, will they have a crew to come install it?
Well, we've used as far as that case in the past, and that would be our intent, right?
Yeah,
Just try to look to do
I was
that.
just wondering about the labor, whether they'd have the contractors and the
They sub
labor
it
to
out.
do it.
Typically, they sub it out.
They'll sub it out as far as to somebody, but they're tied as far as with various mechanical and electrical contractors.
Were there any other questions?
Mr. McCafferty, one question.
Sure.
By going to sole source, do you think we'll be able to keep it under the estimates of $90,000?
That's our intent. I think we should be in that range as far as with those. There's basically 5 pump units.
Okay.
We feel as far as we should be in that range or fairly close. Surely we shouldn't be $60,000 more
Yeah, that one's a little
as
bit,
far as cost, right?
he tried to double up.
It's
Appreciate it.
Walters Morgan's a reputable company, but like he said, they had no good reason for stating why they were so much over.
Did they contact you back, or they just said, we don't have a reason?
We actually contacted them back. Our engineers did and tried to feel them out as far as on why indeed, and they really couldn't give us as far as any sound reasoning as what I was provided back from our engineers.
Okay.
Did you contact any of the other vendors as to why they weren't interested in bidding on this? Or having
No, we
this
did not.
discussion?
No, we did not.
There may be something wrong with maybe the narrative that you sent out. I mean, if nobody's responding, I mean, and these guys are going the other extreme. I mean, is there, I wonder, maybe there's some uncertainty or
In part,
what you're wanting?
why we didn't receive bids the first time, we had heard that some of the vendors that supply the pumps were concerned about competing as far as against one another. That's the some of the discussions that we had had from the first time that we put it out for bid, and we didn't receive any of those. And so what we did is like I said, we direct solicited those individuals again, saying that, look, the city's very interested in trying to get this work completed. And unfortunately, yeah, we only received as far as the one bid. And we contacted as far as, I believe there were half a dozen companies that HDR Engineering has worked with as far as within this Region 7 area, which is the four-state region that we find ourselves in, to try to get individuals to respond to this bid specification. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. And in part, what I'm hearing from HDR as well is that this is a rather small project for many of them to be able to jump at, and ideally, it would be better suited if we would be able to package this into a much larger project. And where we're at right now in this stage of the game as far as design and trying to facilitate getting, we call it immediate needs that are needed at these facilities, that's why this was separated out along with several of those other projects.
Are these vendors you're talking about, do you expect they can respond immediately?
I think if we break this apart as far as in work directly, as far as with the suppliers, from what I'm hearing from the mechanical engineer that we're working with at HDR, is that the likelihood of us getting as far as individuals to work with us is much greater.
Okay.
Because then indeed they're not competing as far as with other vendors or other contractors that they have relationships with, is what we're hearing.
But even when you order the pumps, it'll be several weeks before they'll.
Absolutely. These are not shelved items. What we mean is that these are immediate needs and that they are going to still take several months as far as to procure and get installed versus 6 months to 12 months when you start looking at larger equipment.
These were the pumps that the engineers advised us not to wait on.
Right.
4 months ago.
Yes.
Will any of this tie in with the 2014 plan that we're going to discuss here shortly on wastewater?
Not on the 2014 plan. It ties into the work that we've done in 2015, and the engineers are telling you that that's too long to wait.
Okay. All right, thank you.
2015 is design period, and 2016 was the actual work period, so that's another 2 years out.
Okay.
And they're telling you
No, we need to fix it now.
that
I
you need
got
to
it.
fix it now before,
I got it.
not
It's
wait
broke.
2 more years. And
Yeah, it won't
that's
work.
why,
We'll be putting porta potties around the city if we don't fix it now.
let's not do that.
Yeah, these 5 pumps, 2 of them are the dissolved as far as air pumps. The other 2 are chlorine pumps, or excuse me, the other 3. Viola Water has spent a significant amount of repair and maintenance dollars that they cover as far as on that cost, basically through their contract with the city. All 5 of them are beyond their useful life. Right now, we've got just one of those dissolved oxygen pumps operating. The other one is basically inoperable as far as it's beyond repair. And the chlorine, as far as dosing pumps, again, yeah, HDR is indicating as far as that those pumps are beyond their useful life and they need to be replaced.
We're not in a permit violation with any of this immediate needs work, are we?
No, if these should go down, the likelihood of that occurring is very great.
Right, but right now, we're not into
No.
a
No, all 3 plants are performing as far as our permit. We're in
Okay.
compliance.
Were there any further questions? What is the will of the commission?
I move to not approve the award of bid to Walters Morgan Construction Incorporated, Manhattan, Kansas, for the immediate needs bid, package 5 as presented.
second.
We have a motion and a second to not approve the bid to Walters Morgan. Is there any further discussion?
None here.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0.
Thank you.
Now do we need to give you direction to go ahead
Full source.
to sole source?
I think what we would like to do, we talked about that, HDR Engineering and myself. I think what we'd like to do is see if indeed that's feasible as far as based on what the discussions that we've had thus far. Surely, yeah, you can give us that direction, but we'll still be coming before you, I think, in looking for you to approve as far as that sole source, particularly because of the cost.
Will be over the.
We're going to be in the range of between $90,000 and $100,000 for those five pumps.
We'll be waiting for you to come back to us.
Right, and as well, just a note, you had asked us to give you an update, and we plan on doing that, of all those immediate needs. In other words, what have we spent, what were the engineers' estimates, and what do we still have out there, so that you've got that level of comfort of all of these immediate needs. So that will be presented as part of this, the next package that will be forthcoming.
Okay, very good. Next, we'll have consideration and approval of water and sewer rate increases and adoption of the wastewater financial business plan.
Yes, Mayor and City Commission. I'd like to point out a typo in the report. It's on the second page, and that is that this occurred as a result of us having numerous revisions of this financial business plan as we were fine-tuning the numbers. But the actual water rate increase that we're looking at for 2014 here would be 6.5%, not 7.5%. So the numbers actually has gone down. And I'm sure that you probably perused through the financial business plan as far as in saw the various tables, the projected rates portion. If you were to have looked at table 17 in the report underneath water, and it's actually page 85 in your document, that outlines as far as the projected rates that we have for the next 10 years. So it's actually page 29 of the document for water. And then if you went into the wastewater, you'll see the projected rates that we have, and the rate that we're looking to have adopted is 5.5 for the wastewater or the sanitary sewer. That is on table 36, and it's on page 42 of the document and page 98 of the packet. This comes before you, is noted in the report, where we had retained Raffatellis Financial Consultant to complete a financial business plan as well as various rate recommendations. We've provided you, as far as we believe, as far as that completed financial plan. One of the motions that we're looking for this evening is the City Commission to adopt that plan through a resolution. And then likewise, what we're looking to do is set in motion the means to start generating as far as the dollars towards the capital improvements within both the water and wastewater systems. We presented this in brief as far as to you the other night in both the water and wastewater budgets. They both reflect as far as those rate increases. We have this evening here Tom Beckley. He is the product manager on behalf of Raffatellis. Should you have any questions regarding the financial business plan in detail, hopefully he'll be able to as far as answer those. We worked hand in hand with HDR Engineering in compiling as far as this document, because indeed the engineer's cost estimates as well as the fine-tuning as far as of the projects that were identified as they were presented to you both from HDR as well as from Raffatellis, and we sort of highlighted that to you as basically the alternative that was selected or preferred was really the extended alternative, and the intent there was to complete items to keep us so that we remain in compliant with our permits, and as well as that we minimize as far as the future operational cost as far as on behalf of the city and the system, as well as minimize as far as the future as far as rate adjustments that would be needed. As noted in the document, the intent of this whole program is to go through the state revolving loan program, as well as, should this be approved, is to go forward as far as with the detailed engineering with HDR Engineering. As you recall, that Call Valley is part of that group, so fully, should these engineering projects move forward, they would be part of that as far as overall design, as far as they're able to be able to provide that professional expertise. So in the report, we have two motions for you this evening. One is for the commission to approve the ordinance that's been attached. The ordinance does reflect the correct percentage increases. I wanted to point that out. And also the financial business plan document as it's presented has as far as the correct percentages, which is a 6.5% again for the water and a 5.5% as far as for the sewer. So with that, I'd be happy to maybe answer any questions. And I believe Tom's got a few words that he would like to share with you regarding this financial business plan.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you for having us. Greg covered it pretty well. We worked with Greg as well as HDR Engineering to develop a financial plan basically that provides for the funding of these important capital projects as well as the ongoing maintenance and operation of the water and wastewater utilities over a 10-year period. And really, we spent a lot of time with HDR and city staff to develop this plan to kind of smooth out the rate increases over a number of years, and that's why we went with the extended scenario, because initially the capital plan was even more front-loaded, and by pushing those out a little bit, and it allowed us to provide a more smooth level of rate increase. And certainly, these are, they're greater than inflationary increases, but, to maintain and operate the system as well as to do the capital improvements that HDR has indicated are necessary to provide safe and reliable water and wastewater services. We believe this is the favored approach to meet those needs right now. And I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you have.
Let me ask you a question briefly. I hope it's briefly. In other words, what we have is broke. It's outdated. It's overaged. We need repairs. We don't have the money to do that. So we're looking at a way to ease into making these repairs over an extended period of time, and we're raising the rates so we can raise revenue to make these repairs more palatable or easier to absorb than doing it all at once.
Well, and some of these rate increases are necessary. The last rate increase was approximately 3 years ago now. Some of these rate increases are necessary to cover inflationary cost increases just in our operating maintenance expense since then. So when you look at the cost of the utility, they face the same inflationary pressures as everybody else to some extent. Electricity costs go up, chemical costs go up, employee costs go up, insurance costs go up. So it's important to recognize that even, if we didn't have additional capital needs, we would still have those inflationary increases. And then there are some additional HDRs indicated, and certainly Greg and HDR are better to speak on that. That's part of the reason we're engaged by many cities, is that we provide an independent analysis of how to pay for things. We're not experts on what is needed from an engineering perspective. That's what HDR has been engaged to do. But it's taking what HDR has done and working with city staff to figure out the best way to pay for that. In this case, we also worked with HDR to a great extent, looking at the schedule for those projects and alternatives to improve, how we may be able to pay for that. What could be pushed out, what couldn't. And I don't believe all of you were here when we were here last time. I believe you were, though. We talked about how we looked at some of those alternatives and kind of the trade-offs between those alternatives. And so ultimately, the extended option, like Greg said, is what was selected to provide the best trade-off between reliability and rate increases over time.
And I fully understand that, but I want the residents of Junction City to understand that as well. The component of the cost index raising, a lot of folks don't understand that the cost of doing business goes up every day. The cost of gas goes up, the cost of groceries goes up, the cost of making water goes up. So I just want folks to understand that this is all part of the process to get at the end of the day, at the light at the end of the tunnel. It's not cheap, but where we are, we have an obligation and a duty to make sure that we have safe water, and this is getting us to that point.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And earlier this week, or late last week, I don't remember which, I sent you guys an article that was just dead on this point, and the article headlines was Midwest to see water and wastewater rates to increase over the next 10 years. And with many cities facing the exact same issues that we were. And it went on to explain how the systems are aged, the infrastructure is failing, and it was like timely because it's exactly what we're going through.
And of course, there's also been a challenge. A lot of the original infrastructure, there were a lot more federal grants in the past that were used to pay for much of the original infrastructure many cities installed, 30 to 100 years ago. The federal government paid for a much larger portion, and they've transitioned from providing construction grants to the SRF funding, which the city will, plans on taking advantage of to provide low interest financing, but in the end, it's just low interest financing, and the city has to pay that back over time. But that's the tool that the federal government provides now, is low interest financing, and they don't, grant fund, much of the projects like they did 30 to 100 years ago.
Right.
And this financial plan goes hand in hand with the engineer's plan that said that our equipment will last if we take care of it over scheduled time.
In our financial plan is only a 10-year financial plan, and quite, obviously much of the equipment we're talking about will have useful lives of 10 to 100 years. When it gets down to piping, piping can last about, up to 100 years. So we don't look at, necessarily looking at replacing 100-year-old piping in our financial plan, but basically, this is meant to provide us a tool over the next 10 years, if not longer. One of the challenges in our work is it's relatively easy for us we could look at 100 years if we wanted to, relatively easy. The challenge is we just don't know what the regulatory environment, we don't know what the regulatory environment's going to look like in 5 years, to some extent. So, the HDR is making educated guesses. And we talked about this actually last time. One of the scenarios we looked at was for the wastewater plant, trying to get our permit next time, whether or not we would be able to get a waiver on a requirement that the state is trying to roll out to push it back another 5 years. So things like that, we don't have perfect insight onto. So we always caution people, we can look at 100 years relatively easily, and it's not that much more effort, but our insight onto costs that far out just isn't there, and it can give you a false sense of where you're going when we just don't have any insight into what's going to really be the reality then.
Okay.
Any other questions? What is the will of the commission?
I move to approve the adoption of the Water and Wastewater Ordinance G 1148 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Do a roll call vote?
Yeah, it'll be a roll call vote. Are there any further questions?
I just have one last question. So the rates we're looking at for water and wastewater are not 5.5, but 6.5 and 5.5?
Correct, for 2014.
All right.
In the
7.5.
in the primary report, we talked about 7.5 and 5.5. This one is 6.5 and 5.5.
Right, if you were to look, again, I'm just going to point the tables you want to look at in the financial business plan that shows that projection, table 17. And it's page 45 in your packet or 29 in the document. So go to page 29 in the document, table 17. And if you see there's a table there that is shaded in blue, just to the left of that table shows the projected water rates over the next 10 years.
It's table 20.
Oh, I'm sorry, table 20, I apologize.
Yes, I think.
33 of our document, I don't know what it is, I'm sorry.
Oh, I apologize. I'm giving you the wrong table. I got several tables I wanted. Table 20, and it is page 33 of the document.
There you go.
Okay.
Sorry about that. And then also on the wastewater, table 39, and it would be page 45 of the document. Shows the wastewater. I've got two tables referenced here because I thought we might get into what are those actual projects, and as I was sharing you those are also found in a table sense.
The one thing I read was for the minimum users, they probably won't experience very much. I believe it is 5 CCFs and under, or 2 CCFs for people with water, 5
actually,
CCFs for wastewater.
My understanding is there was an article in the newspaper today. I've already talked with the Daily Union. We'll try to get that clarified. I think there were some errors in there. As you recall, when we had Ralph Atellis come before you, the typical customer's monthly rate is around $50 to $55 as far as a month. And these rates basically outline, as far as we had shared with you earlier, it really depends on the amount of water and wastewater that one uses.
Exactly.
But what we shared with you is that they should be looking at between a $5 to $10 increase per month as far as being passed on to them. And again, it's all subject to as far as the amount of water that they're using.
Exactly. All right, thank you. No further discussion.
Are we ready to vote?
Roll call vote. Commissioner Landis?
Yes.
Commissioner Aska?
Yes.
Mayor Ryan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sands?
Yes.
Commissioner McAllister?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Yes, there's also a resolution 2756 for consideration. That's to adopt the business plan.
I move to approve the adoption of Resolution R 2756 for the adoption of the city's wastewater financial business plan as presented. I think that was written a little strange, but it's okay.
It looks like there was a typo as far as on a couple of words there carried over.
Second.
Did you say that?
Yes.
I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution R 2756. Any further discussion?
None here.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0.
Thank you.
Next, we have consideration and approval of an amendment to the city engineering design standards, driveways.
Yes, Mayor and City Commission, this item comes before you because the engineering department had received a letter from Larry Johnson concerning the city's standards with respects to driveway widths and their construction as far as requirements with respects to the city's engineering standards. As you recall, also, I believe at the last commission meeting, Mr. Johnson had brought this up before you. We gave in the packet the table that we had utilized as we had developed the city's engineering standards for that driveway segment. This is very similar to as we had recommended and adopted and requested the adoption of many other items in the city's engineering standards. I put on your table this evening even a further updated table. It's this one here, and it's shaded. This one actually includes 4 additional communities that we contacted over the last 2 weeks with respects to find out indeed what their standards were with respects to the minimum and maximum as far as width. And our contacts as far as to each of these communities was directly to the city engineer's office. So what we provided you is basically on residentials, the minimum and maximum widths that the community currently permits as far as that are within their standards. You may have heard as far as, well, this community allows this or that. This is actually what they've got on the books. So we spoke directly to the city engineer's office of each community. Likewise, when you look at the commercial, as far as we outlined to you the minimum and maximum, as well as we provided as far as do they allow asphalt, say driveways or approaches, or do they allow as far as indeed concrete as far as approaches. And at the very top of that table, you'll see indeed Junction cities. And as we noted to you before, we felt that our standards were sound and just as far as with the particular minimum and maximum. And then we also highlighted to you as far as on there, we're not the lowest with respects to minimum, and we're not the highest with respects to width. You'll notice that there's actually only one community there, and that's the city of Emporia, that has a 40-foot width. Everyone else, there are 3 communities that have a 30-foot width, actually 4 communities that have a 30-foot width. Some, as far as indeed, have 24. And the other items that we used, and we really relied quite a bit on this when we first started, was we looked at the American Public Works Association and also the Institute of Traffic Engineers, because they are very concerned about ingress and egress and transportation as far as items in particular. That's why indeed you'll see on theirs, they generally don't get into the depths of materials. They're more concerned about as far as the movement of transportation as far as vehicles. So as noted in our report, the recommendation of staff is that we feel indeed that there is no need as far as to amend as far as the city's standards, and that they should remain as they are. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have further.
I'll be the first. Mr. McCafferty, when I was looking at this, and I think if I'd had the property living in my high-cost rent district, I guess I live in, I would have put a three-car garage in. But what is the difference in the 6 feet? Does it do something with the drainage or anything? Or by adding the 6 feet or extending it, because there are a lot more three-car garages, I would have loved to have had a three-car garage, but I didn't think about it. So what happens when we extend it to 6 more feet?
I think this is what we had found, and we actually read through a couple of studies that were completed by the Institute of Traffic Engineers. There is the perception that indeed you need to have 10-foot or 12-foot minimum as far as width for a vehicle to be able to sit as far as comfortably in that driveway and be able to open those doors as far as on, say, the truck or the car, okay? When we set ourselves at that 30-foot width, the thought process would be that there would be 2 vehicles sitting side by side. In the area that we're talking about is in the public right-of-way, that area that is generally 1 foot inside as far as the sidewalk to the street. That's the area we're talking. Right. What we did find is that a couple of communities do permit that after they get as far as to the sidewalk area, and there may be additional right-of-way, they allow that throat to open up. I will say that I've worked in 2 communities that a 3-car garage was the norm. I mean, literally saw 300 to 400 houses get built a year for a period of 6 to 7 years like that in this community. And the standards were very consistent to what we have here. What they did basically say is once you get onto your property, you can make that driveway as wide as you'd like. What we're trying to do is control as far as that ingress egress of people going diagonally as far as across as far as those driveways and getting in and out of those driveways and really slow down that speed. I heard Mr. Johnson indicate that, hey, we've got some lots that are at the end of cul-de-sacs and alike. Really the premise as far as when you look at this maximum width, and that's why you see as far as even, say, the Institute of Traffic Engineers or even APWA, they say 23 feet, is they're really trying to slow down traffic in and out of those driveways,
You're saying the width of a driveway determines how fast you come out of your driveway?
Yes.
That's what studies
Yes. Documentation proves that as far as in studies that have been completed by those 2 groups.
I would think, depending on what kind of hill and dip you got there, is going to determine how
It does.
fast you're
What your
coming out.
Visibility is.
It does. It slows as far as indeed. It slows you down as far as with that width. The wider that width, the greater the speed that you'll go in and out of that driveway. And you are correct. I mean, yeah, the dip, the grade changes that too. And we've addressed that in our standards. We've said that here, where we're looking for a minimum grade of a driveway as far as likewise as well, which that truly wasn't addressed before, and it's a safety issue when you have very steep grades.
I didn't know that. That's news to me.
Right.
I had never heard that before.
There's several studies by ITE out there that we had reviewed.
Okay. When you say that the maximum width is 30 foot, however, you allow for the approach at the curb to be throated. Did you say that, or did I misunderstand that?
No, if you look at, we gave you a copy of our typical detail sheet as well, included as far as in your packet. That includes as far as the dimension right there at the curb.
Okay.
So you could carry that driveway 30 feet back all the way onto your property and then widen it from there. Or you can indeed have a driveway that is narrower than what's right at the curb. But the flare and the driveway at the curb, the city standard is 30 feet. And that's what you're seeing on these other communities as you see their dimensions. That's what their standards are. That includes the driveway and the flare.
Do we have any driveways currently in Junction City that are wider than 30 feet?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, we do.
But we didn't have adopted engineering standards until this year, or last year.
Okay, let me just clarify and make sure that I understand. The maximum width is 30 feet, then at 10-foot minimum, you can swale that out to a 5-car garage if you wanted to.
On your property.
Right. So,
Sure.
so if you had a 3-car garage, you're regulated to 30 feet, and then you can go to your 12-foot lanes and go 36 to pick up. It's just that swale that you have
right.
to.
And we actually saw, I can't remember which community it was, whether it was Lawrence or Topeka.
What they do.
They actually allow
I'll make sure.
you to widen that driveway. Let's just say that the right-of-way width was more past the sidewalk than onto your property. Do you follow me? If there is that additional distance, they would allow you to basically flare that driveway out wider immediately past the sidewalk. Okay, but the area essentially from the sidewalk in towards the street, we found many of the communities set maximum dimensions. And I guess what we're here to say is that we feel that we did the research as far as when we adopted, as far as what our maximum was, and surely could the commission, as far as will to change that? Absolutely. That's why we presented the standards to you and had you adopt them in a resolution format, so you have that ability that if you feel there is sound reason to amend those, you have that ability. I think the position of staff is we feel that they should remain.
Is it just me not reading this thing?
Say that again?
Is it just me that just doesn't understand this?
I had to flip it, then you'll see the driveway. But you can't flip it.
Stand on your head.
I have mine locked. Width to the corners there is 30 feet.
Well,
So we're saying it can't go straight like that.
But you can make it straight,
Another example
but you have
of
to,
anything.
your drive-in lip
I understood what it was once.
is going to be into your shoulder.
This one here?
You'll have
It didn't show me anything.
a slope up there and then a slope up to these
But you
two.
have to have this lip, is that what?
well, is this confusing saying where it says proposed culvert, 22-foot minimum, 36-foot maximum?
Right. That's, what we were trying to do is that residential driveway provides not only the means that if you had curb and gutter along that area, but also if indeed you, say, had an open ditch area. And we do have areas that don't have curb and gutter in this community, so we were trying to provide a combination as far as standard to try to give some guidance, not only on what you see as far as in the written standard portion, but this is actually clipped out of the standard detail sheets. This is actually a sub area on one of the city's standard detail sheets, which is dealing as far as with street construction or miscellaneous as far as standards.
Well, I don't understand what the confusion is then. If you can have as wide a driveway as you want, except for the curb cut being 30 feet, I don't know how that does not accommodate a 3-car garage.
It does.
So either I'm missing something or,
We're saying 30 feet within the public right-of-way area. Once you get onto the private property, and I have to tell you, I've seen thousands of them, where they used to have 3, 4, 5-car garages. Once they got onto that property, that driveway opened up to 50, 60 feet wide because they wanted actually a basketball court for their kids. I mean, they put a single hoop there, but man, they wanted half a court. You know, so they would, yeah, they'd pour that concrete, you know.
Charge them a
4 to
stormwater
6.
fee.
Yeah, that's exactly what will happen.
Right. It does make for a lot of impervious area, but, I mean,
It's hard to imagine 30 feet is not enough. I mean,
It-
backing in a fifth wheel in or whatever, is it that tough? I don't know.
hard to imagine that this much on either side is too much. I just,
But it totals to 6 feet.
I understand that we need to have standards. I got that piece of it.
Mr. Johnson, please,
On the standards that
come to the podium.
On the standards that we've been given, or I've been given, it shows that you can come out 30 feet and then flare it out with a 5-foot radius on either side. So you're going to have 40 feet at the curb anyway, with the radius. And this is what the city gave me. And it seems like there's a huge discrepancy about what we hear one day to the next. I mean, you talk to one of the city inspectors.
Can I see that?
Sure.
It's the same thing that you've got.
So you're saying 30-foot wide with a 5-foot radius on either side, minimum.
That's just right at the
Because
curb.
that would give you your 40 feet at the street.
That's a curb cut of 40 feet.
And that's not a curb cut, because in these areas that we're doing it, in a lot of the city subdivisions now, they use a lay-down curb, so you don't even cut the curb. You're not touching the street at all, basically, just where you come up to it with the concrete. And like I was saying, some of the inspectors have been of the impression that if it's a lay-down curb, you can go to 36 feet wide, that's not a problem. And then you talk to the other inspector, and no, it isn't. And that's where the whole question has come up. What is it?
Well, I can see where this would be confusing, because from opening to opening, it's 40 feet. It shows 40 feet. However, it shows 30 feet of driveway.
Right.
It's right here to here.
And then between where you have the property line, and the sidewalk, you have a 1-foot gap that you'd have solid concrete all the way across, but you'd have 1 foot of dirt there that you couldn't do anything with.
It shows a 5-foot radius on either side of a 30-foot driveway, giving you a total cut of 40 feet.
Yeah, I want to
So it's
comment on this.
it's a
I
little
want to comment on that
confusing.
drawing when I get a chance.
And we've done, like I said, 6 of the 19 homes we've done in the past 4 or 5 years had 3-car garages, and,
There's Mayhew
well,
signed.
6 of them had
Previous to.
36-foot driveways. One of them came in the side and from different angle completely, but
Longer works here.
I got that.
and I don't, we're not affecting the street drainage. Traffic seems to me to be just as easy to get in and off the street on a 36-foot driveway as a 30-foot with 5-foot wings.
This is 30. And then the 3 is out on the side that actually have-
Understand that standards change, and we make changes for the betterment of the community. When I look at this and it says 1994, if that's what you were given, as opposed to what we have here today, I can understand your confusion. I don't know why you're going off a 1994 standard when the 2013 standard is significantly different.
Because that's what the city gave me when they stopped me on the house that we built on Foxdale with a 36-foot driveway, which they didn't tell us it was an issue until 4 days before we were closing, and they'd done numerous inspections on the house before we were closing, and no one mentioned that the driveway was too wide until we were ready to close. And so this came up, and we have 2 more homes who are doing the same type home, and the soldiers that we're selling them to want 36-foot driveways that come straight out from their garages. And
The design standards that we adopted in October of 13 say the maximum's 30.
And no one from the city informed any contractor about that. Even the people on the contractor board that I communicated with today, who have no problem with changing these standards, and Manhattan and Salina have both adjusted their standards to accommodate the 3-car garages.
I appreciate that, Mr. Johnson, but also, we didn't just one day out of the sky vote that in. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of research for some time. And the contractors board should have been aware that design standards changes were coming. Yes, maybe we're remiss on having a class. But I'm not willing to change the standards that we've been using, that we've had implemented for 6 months. And it's obviously taken time to get everybody on board and understand that that's what we want.
I understand, but the stuff that you're adopting, just like you're seeing there, it was passed in '68. Yeah, it took them 46 years to start enforcing it.
Right. And what we're enforcing today is what was adopted in 2013. Yes, maybe there were tighter rules in the past that weren't enforced, but our staff has been told to enforce what we adopted.
Okay. Well, I just see surrounding communities changing and adapting. And three-car garages 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you just didn't see them. Now it's becoming more and more common.
In the last 2 weeks, we found one city, Emporia, that has 40-foot drives. Everybody else is 30-foot or under.
No, Salina and Manhattan isn't, according to their ordinances that they publish. And according to their inspectors over there.
Thank you.
Greg can explain what the 24-foot Manhattan and Salina 30-foot.
I would like to comment on a couple items. That drawing, I am familiar with that, as well as there are half a dozen others that were drawn by an engineering tech in the engineering department. None of those were formally adopted by the city as a design standard. And like I said, there are half a dozen of different makes and sketches like that that were developed as far as within the engineering office. We're fully aware of those.
So if they're adopted, why are we handing them out?
We do not hand that document out. The document that we hand out is the one that you have in your packet. That's what's provided when they come in for a right-of-way permit. I also want to clarify, you were advised that the city of Manhattan had adopted a new standard of 36 feet. I'm here to say this evening that I personally spoke to Robert Ott, who is the Director of Public Works, former city engineer for Manhattan, and their standard is 24 feet. It's in that document there, okay, in our document. So nowhere are we aware of any kind of standard, nor is the former city engineer or Director of Public Works of Manhattan, who oversees their standard, aware of their standard being 36 feet, as you were told 2 weeks ago. And likewise, the city of Salina, as you see in there, their standards, yes, indeed, they were recently adopted. Dan Stacks, who's the city engineer over there as well, our staff spoke directly to him. And indeed, those are their standards, which are very consistent with the city of Junction Cities, which is a 30-foot maximum, and actually their minimum width is 24 feet. So I just wanted to clarify those two items as far as to the city commission.
Am I right, though, according to this drawing, so once you get past the sidewalk or the flare, then you can flare it back out as wide as you want?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Mr. McCaffrey,
Yes.
I want to make sure I got the whole thing covered here. Manhattan, 2 years ago, Planning Commission approved 6-0 to go with a 36. I guess that didn't go any further. I just kind of Googled to see who's got a 36 cut, and Manhattan was going with an approval of the Planning Commission. But you talked to the Public Works guy.
And this in the engineering department, which oversees right-of-way permits.
Okay.
And that's correct. That's what their standards are. Their standards actually are on their website as well, as is ours.
Okay.
So, and they enforce the right-of-way permit within the community, not their planning commission.
Okay. Thank you.
Comment on that, if you go to the Manhattan website, that's what I send all of you on email. Same way as Salina.
June 4, 2012.
Sounds like we need an independent review. Something's not adding up.
It goes back and forth at the end of the 6-0 resolution.
For 36.
That's the planning guys. It's got to go to the commission.
So we inspected his properties, the ones that have the 36-foot driveways right now, and we allowed those to happen?
If he would have had those 36-foot ones going in before our engineering standards, which were adopted, I believe, in November of last year, then yes, they would have been permitted.
Since November of last year.
I couldn't
You done
say
any
that.
homes
I've
since
not
then?
seen as far as the right-of-way permits that have been approved.
When we had the issue on Foxdale, the driveway was put in, I believe, after November. We applied for the permit prior to them doing it. Then all the inspections were done. The driveway was put in like November, December time period. And it's there the whole time before closing. Atrocious on the driveway.
I couldn't comment on that one specifically. I've not seen that actual right-of-way permit.
All right, let me be the devil's advocate here. If we have a 36 driveway that's already put in, it's kind of like the horse is already out and the cart's still waiting to be pulled. What do we do if we still go with what we have here at 30 feet? We put in some 36s already. This 36 is in. Are we going to tell them to go back and fill in to 30?
No, because you applied for the permit, and the permit likely was approved prior to the standards being adopted.
Okay.
So if he was to apply today, then we would say
No.
it needs to be 30 feet.
He just said he applied for the permit before November, which is acceptable then, because he applied for the permit prior to the adopting the standards. So the 36 he has in he would not be required then to tear it out. But for any new driveway he's putting in, he would have to go to 30 feet.
Well, my understanding here, this item that's on the agenda is to not have him have the 36 feet, so
No.
I stand corrected then.
Yeah, he requested at the last meeting that it be put on the agenda to change, Mr. Johnson requested, for it to be on the agenda, for the next agenda, to have you amend the ordinance. And so we did. You agreed that it can be allowed on the agenda, and so we allowed it on the agenda to bring it up, and staff is recommending not to change it.
Okay, so the 36 that he's got in right now is unaffected, but anything from here on
Yes.
is affected, and Junction City driveways will be no wider than 30 feet. You can spread it, what do you say, that thing, throat something afterwards?
Yeah, after the
Curve.
sidewalk.
Okay.
Any further questions? How many people want to table it and study it, act on it later?
Yeah, I'd like to check into things a little bit.
I do have a closing comment.
Please, no more.
I'd like to make a motion, we postpone the request for amendment until such time as further information is provided. There's a discrepancy on, I'd like to see some documentation from Manhattan,
Sure.
Salina.
Sure, sure, we can provide that.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to table this item. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0.
Thank you.
The next item is discussion by City Commission on annexation. I asked this to be put back on our agenda to have another look at it. When we looked at it before, I was told that there's going to be a cost, but it was kind of a ballpark price, and it came back, and the cost is a little more, but it's a not to exceed price. And I know that some of us are vehemently against this idea, but I would like to have a good look at it before I say yes or no on anything. I want to understand exactly what I'm saying yes or no about.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I may, as a procedural matter, since a motion was made, it was a motion to what? To not approve the study? What was the action?
Not to move forward with the preparation of the plan for extension of services.
Okay. And since that motion was made and passed at a prior meeting, for this to be reconsidered, if you're talking about action tonight as opposed to just a discussion, there would have to be a motion to rescind the prior motion. That motion would have to be seconded and approved by 3 of you.
Can I make the motion?
Typically, the chair does not make a motion. Anybody else can?
Okay.
So moved.
And this is merely to rescind the prior action so that it can be reconsidered. It's not moving to approve it or undo it. It's just to open it up for, essentially, for reconsideration. So there's a motion?
Would that be the same as tabling it, though?
No, it's really
Just
taking
open it back up.
Open it back up.
It's just open the whole issue back up.
Open it back
To
up.
discuss it.
To discuss it.
Okay.
Not to approve anything.
And then motion's been made.
We made the motion. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second to rescind the motion to not move forward with the plan for annexation.
It was actually to prepare the document for extension of services, not for annexation.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
We have further discussion.
We have a motion and a second.
So the motion to rescind, just to make it clear, is it's as if the prior action didn't happen, which was a motion not to approve the study that was proposed. That's all, just the study portion of it. So if this motion passes, that whole issue is back on the table for further discussion.
But we want to table it for documentation to be brought forward.
No, we're not talking about, we're talking about the annexation.
We're talking about annexation now.
Oh, you just said previous motion.
No.
I'm sorry.
The previous motion was to move forward at
May 20th meeting.
4 weeks ago.
yeah, it was about to move forward to have the city start investigating or looking into the annexation.
Okay, so the sidewalk thing is a done deal?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
I'm
all,
sorry.
something totally
Yeah,
different.
because you got me on that one.
I'm very sorry. I
I
was.
was out there paddling my boat. I had 2 oars and I wasn't going nowhere. All right, so sidewalk's done, right?
Yeah. So
Sidewalk
where's
is
your
done.
second?
I don't have a second now.
Right.
Mayor can second. Right?
I think the mayor can second.
'Cause I've
I
made
just
motions
don't think
before
he
when I was
can-
mayor,
he
so.
can move.
Then I would second it.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second to rescind the previous issue on,
Previous vote.
the previous vote on discussion of annexation. or
On
moving
this-
forward.
To approve
To-
to not approve
To
this.
to not approve the study on annexation. Are there any further discussion?
Yeah, there's a discussion, but I guess I don't understand why we are rescinding something to discuss.
Because
Since we passed a motion, we can't discuss it again unless we
Not that the motion
Wipe, seal, and clean.
was ordering the staff to go ahead and look into it as opposed to just.
No.
No.
This is to reopen it on the table.
Was not,
Just to discuss and not to do it necessarily, but we can't we can't even discuss it further unless we rescind that prior motion that was passed.
Because it was.
3-1 to 1.
It directed staff to do nothing.
In order for then there to be further action, someone would have to make a motion either tonight or at some other meeting to direct staff to move forward. Or alternatively, the same motion would be made again, but nothing would happen unless there's a further motion after discussion. So this is just to reopen it for discussion.
It's a Robert's Rule issue, and that's
It's
what we govern.
Robert's Rules of Order.
That's the way we are governed by our city code, Robert's Rule.
so 4 weeks ago, we discussed and we decided to, by vote, not to proceed with the preparation of the plan for extension of services. After a lengthy discussion that included the cost, at that time was $8,000, and now it's gone from $8,000 to $10,400 plus whatever JCAT, I think it was another $6,500 for JCAT if we continue. So the cost is just as what we discussed 4 weeks ago. Was we have a hard time deciding how we're going to bring in revenue, yet we're going to do another study. We've had a lot of constituents email and telephone calls saying that we have 11,000 lots in this city that we can't get
11,000.
taxes on.
No.
1,100, I'm sorry, 1,100. Correction, thank you. That we can't get tax on, that we can't get development on, yet we're going to go out and do another study to determine whether we can do this extension of services. And if past history is any indication, the extension of services didn't occur when other properties were annexed, regardless of what promises were made. And so there's been a lot of discussion. I hope there's not been a lot of discussion on the government side, but I know there's been a lot of discussion on in the private side with residents that we're bringing in or we're thinking about what it would take to bring more properties into the city through annexation. So we're going to throw more money at it. So we're going to throw more money at it to determine what it's going to take. And we talk about an extension of services. There's some of those properties that the extension of services would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that study in itself is going to be more expensive than $8,000, $10,400. Again, I thought 4 weeks ago we decided that at least for the time being, through budget season, through with all the other things that we have going on, that we had indicated to staff, hold off. Don't spin your wheels and spend money until a later date when we can sit down and discuss it and maybe even have a workshop and maybe be a little bit more informed and maybe be a little bit more educated by staff to understand what the magnitude is. We see a map and the map shows these Swiss cheese and it shows these holes and such and so forth. But that's not the true picture. That we need to discuss that face to face instead of going out and throwing dollars at it first. I just think I think we're moving in a direction that we shouldn't be moving in. We're spending money that we don't have. I think we need to sit back. We need to collectively, calmly, and professionally talk about what our options are amongst those folks that make those decisions and staff before we throw open the checkbook. I've got a lot of email and I've got a lot of phone calls from constituents, both inside the city and outside the city, that say this is an unwanted expenditure at this time or any time. It goes both ways. I think we need to honor the decisions that are made here and not revisit those decisions every time it doesn't go the way some folks think it ought to go. I believe that we need to, that's what this board does, is we talk about it and then we make a decision. So far, we haven't talked about it. So far, we've had a little banter back and forth. And some of it's healthy, some of it's not. But I think we ought to have a workshop and discuss this, what our goals and what our expectations are before we jump out, open the checkbook, and start spending money. I ask the commission to think about that. There's no loud voices. There's no bullying. I think professionally we can sit down and look eye to eye and figure out what our expectations are before we can open up the checkbook.
I think what we just did,
Excuse
though.
me. We have a motion and a second on the floor that we need to deal with.
Okay.
We can't discuss it until we rescind the motion,
Yeah,
or until we rescind the vote. That,
that's a point of order.
so, we have a motion and a second to rescind the vote from May 20th. All in favor? Or is there any further discussion before we vote?
Not narrative.
The discussion would be to talk about the annexation, and if that's what we're doing, rescinding to, as Commissioner McAllister said, to actually discuss things, or are we just wanting to bring it back? I think, from what my understanding is that we want to bring it up for discussion, to have that discussion you're talking about, or to set up a time for a work session. A work session where we can look at this and work with the public, or that's, because I think we went way beyond the point of order, because we were already into discussion phase of the city commission on annexation. We went way past that, so point of order was, we were way out of line there. We were into discussion already.
But you should act on the motion, so
So we have
you should call for a vote.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say aye.
Aye.
It's closed, 3-2. Commissioner comments? Commissioner McAllister?
I'd like to say, with regards to the question about bringing up the extension of services and the possibility of annexation, I think we need to broaden that scope a little bit, and we need to discuss it a little bit more amongst the commission and amongst the residents of Junction City and Gary County. I don't think it will hurt anything to get some folks in and get some different views. I do firmly believe that there are some areas that need discussion. But what I don't know and what I don't understand, and until staff educates me, what are we talking about? What areas? How long have those areas been that way? Why are those areas that way? And I don't want to get into that debate now. I agree that there is a time that we can sit down and we can discuss and get more education and more information. And without that, I'm not comfortable, and I'm not going to belabor that. I'm not going to belabor that anymore. That's what this process is about. That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Sands?
A few things. As a commission, we look for things that'll help the city. So sometimes we put out comments looking for how residents feel. We don't make decisions in a box, in a closed box. We actually wanted to know what some people thought about closing of the parks. And Mr. Powell, I appreciate you coming forward. We weren't saying move the parks just because we didn't care about anybody, but we did want to get a consensus if there was anyone using it, because we don't know everything. We don't actually live there, and I don't play in those playgrounds. But what we were trying to do is look at a way to make sure we were getting the biggest bang. From what you're saying, if other people come forward and say, yeah, there are kids using it, that's fine. But we're not trying to put one part of the city against another part. Everybody in this city is pretty much equal, every one of us. So I don't know who the rich people are. I'm certainly not one of them, but I managed to move over on that side. So don't look at me as rich. I'm retired and I don't have an income. All right. Second thing we got is this water main break was pretty bad, and I got a lot of comments, and a lot of people called me. I don't know why I'm the water guy, but I don't mind being a water guy. This thing wasn't planned. The hotels, the residents, the businesses, the apartments down there without water, nobody was actually penned to go without water. That main broke, and if you came out on Washington Street, you saw that big yellow piece of equipment with a hole that was dug about 14 feet plus. That wasn't something we planned for. And we already know that our water system's old, and this is just evident of it. It broke, from what I understand, 2 weekends. Hotels lost lots of money. Everyone down there lost money. And it wasn't our intent to have people go without water. We want you to have the services that you pay for. And I don't know what we can do beyond that. There's no way to bring in another water tower and plug it in for the residents that live over there. We continue to work the best way that we could. We restored that water yesterday afternoon, and we're continuing to work to ensure that everyone in the city has the resources, utilities, and water source that you pay for. We weren't happy with that, and like I said, one of the hotels went and got some porta potties to put out there, and they lost a lot of guests. But the guests that had come in there, they kind of looked at it as camping. They wanted it. They liked the hotel location, and they stayed. We did lose a lot of revenue that past weekend. At the CVB, as one of the meetings, the boards I'm on, the CVB this afternoon, a couple events that we had that we usually look for our income in the city. Usually like the biplane fly in. We had severe bad weather, so we didn't get all the planes. But we did have planes come from Washington State. We had planes come from Texas, Colorado, that actually got put down in Lyman. Then he came back up because of low ceiling. He had to land again in Hayes. But these folks were just coming. Some of the folks from New York and Massachusetts couldn't make it in because the weather went east as it left from here. So once we were out of bad weather, other folks couldn't make it. We normally do pretty good on that weekend. I can't give you an estimate on how much we anticipate came in, but there were still a lot of folks that went out to visit. I was there for the entire day. If there are people looking for a source of making money, there was one food vendor there, and we sold out of food so quick with the Historical Society. We don't mind having company, but that was pretty much the only food source for after breakfast with Chris Cakes. On the CVB board, we're going to have 2 positions open, so anyone that's looking to become a member on the Convention and Visitors Bureau, if you have ideas, you want to stay active, there's a 2-term on there, 2-term period for you to come on there. But we're looking for folks. If you're interested, send your name to Connie Hall or Rick Dystra, or just send it to the CVB. We're looking for good people who are motivated, that want to get involved with bringing visitors and representation to our city. We're doing a pretty good job. On the governor's bike ride, the governor's I guess that's the best way to put it, is bike ride. There was some wonderful stuff put together, but the attendance was severely low because I think it was done pretty much distant away from here and not put out very well here. There were a few of us here. I believe Representative Roethlisberger was there. I got there after the biplane fly-in. They had a wonderful band, some wonderful vendors. I was just sorry to see that we didn't get a lot of people out there with it. But from what the folks were saying, there was about 65 bikes that rode with the governor. He was a different person there. And for anyone that knows, our garrison commander does push-ups extremely well. And you can talk to Miss Honey Grant about that. This past weekend, we had a very successful Juneteenth celebration. I think it's one of the better ones we had. Friday night didn't go so well, but the folks that came out to represent Juneteenth from the city and the community, it's not just one culture. This is a diverse celebration, and doggone it, there were people from all over that came out. They enjoyed themselves. We did less better, but there was so much food out there and so much of a good time. It was done just right. A few hours, make it good, and then make it over. One other thing. That's everything I got, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sands. Commissioner Aska.
Just want to comment on Juneteenth. It was looked like a little bigger celebration than previous years. Wasn't able to spend the kind of time I wanted there. Other things going on, but I hope they continue to build on that, and hope that the participation increases each year with that particular event. That's all.
Commissioner Landis.
I toured the animal shelter this past week and met the new director, Jennifer Gefeller, who's doing a great job. They are at beyond capacity out there. They need help. If you want a pet, quit buying them. Plain and simple. Quit buying puppies. Quit buying them from anybody selling them out of a box. Go to the animal shelter. Get an animal that really wants to be loved. That's all they need. It's so simple. It's very cheap. They're already spayed, neutered, ready to go. And they don't keep vicious animals there. They keep nice pets that just want someone to love them. It's very simple. Quit breeding things on your own. We are overflowing. I mean, if we didn't have the Friends of Animals, we'd be putting down 10 to 20 animals a day. And we're very, very grateful to have those people. They do an outstanding job, but they can't do it all. I mean, I think we need to be more aggressive with the spade and neuter ordinance here in this town. We need to quit selling animals in this town, quite honestly, I think. I mean, it's beyond critical mass, and it's just absurd what goes on in this town every day. They drop them off at the pet stores here in town, or the pet food stores here in town. Oh, my cat had kittens, here, you take them, the animal shelter's full. This happens all the time, and it's just flat wrong. If you have a pet, get it spayed and neutered tomorrow. There's low-cost physicians in town that'll take care of that for you. Annexation. I wrote an article 2 weeks ago, or a week ago Saturday, that was very well received, and I guess it depends on who you talk to. It's always a touchy subject in any community. I'm of the opinion, in my industry, in healthcare, quite often services are provided and they're never paid for. And I understand that there are limited means at times, but I feel that it is important that if you're going to receive a service or a product, you should pay for it. Make every attempt to do that. We are providing police, fire, and EMS coverage to everyone on that map and along our borders that is not in Junction City at no additional cost. None. We need revenue in this town to pay for things, to pay for our water mains that break all the time, to pay for our streets that are going to be gravel in a few years. And we don't have it. We need the help of everyone that's using those services, plain and simple. When an annexation is done, that's what you're guaranteed. Enhanced police, fire, and EMS coverage. That's it. Everything else, roads, sewer, and water, a benefit district has to be created, just as if there was a new housing development. You pay specialists for 20 years to pay for those things. So to do that, and I understand there's some people that were probably sold a bill of goods 6, 8 years ago, and I'm sorry that it wasn't done properly. But we've got some really smart people that know how to do this stuff and do it the right way. to make it happen. Because it is just flat wrong that somebody on one side of the street is in town and somebody on the other side of the street that is not. And yet they receive the same services for no additional cost. That's wrong. So when we're out of money and we have to raise taxes to fix our roads and streets and everything else, this is what you got. Thank you.
This past weekend, I worked a benefit for Becky Keating. Becky's a 24-year-old girl, lives here in town. Needs a double lung transplant. She suffered with cystic fibrosis all her life. And I had a son that had CF, and Patrick had a double lung transplant. And my friends here in town talked me into doing fundraisers. Making that commitment to open your life up to do something like that is pretty tough, because I never thought that I'd be panhandling from a family. But when your child is in the last year of their life, and the transplant team tells you that you have to have $50,000 to $60,000 on top of anything that you have equity in order to cover the costs to get through the transplant stages. You find out in a hurry who your friends are. You find out that I had friends pushing me to do it. Finally, they came to me and said, Mike, it started, there's going to be a fundraiser this weekend. They were successful in raising enough money. My son had his transplant, and it bought Patrick 5 more years. I think it was worth it. Now I just met a girl. I've known Becky for a while because, quite obviously, Patrick's and my family's life was pretty much wide open after doing fundraising. Becky's mother contacted me several years ago. So now when Becky's decided that she wants to be on the list, wants to go forward, now it's crunch time and we need to raise money as fast as possible. They asked me what I could do, so I turned to the people that helped me. And the firefighters said that, yeah, they'd start doing some fundraisers. Right now we have Bats for Becky going out at the brigade's baseball games. You can make a pledge to donate for however much money you want for every game that the brigade wins this year. And in September, there will be the firefighters benefit run, and that'll the runner's choice of either a 5 or 10K run. And those proceeds will go to Blessings for Becky. So enough of that. On annexation, by voting to tell staff to not move forward, we blocked bringing anybody in. We blocked looking at any of the Swiss cheese spots in town. Instead of doing the study and taking a look at it and then deciding what we did and didn't want to do, I just think we made a preemptive decision to not do anything. I felt that was wrong. Miss Beatty, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Miss Katie?
No.
Tyler?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Chief Brown?
No, sir.
Greg?
Nothing, Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Jim?
Nothing, sir.
Chief Royce?
No, sir.
I believe we're done.
Motion to adjourn.
Need a motion.
Motion and a second. We're done.